Hey everyone, excited to be back for this week's edition of Frequently Asked Questions for Commercial Real Estate. In today's video, what I thought I'd do is provide you with insights on the pros and cons of multifamily investing. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm a commercial real estate agent here in Louisville, Kentucky, and my focus areas are both retail and multifamily investing. So I really truly believe that both these property types offer unique opportunities for people who are looking to maximize their returns over time. But before actually diving into making your first investment, or maybe you're already invested in other commercial property types, it's important to understand the nuances of each so that you can decide whether or not investing in multifamily properties is right for you. So in today's video, we're going to focus on the pros and cons of multifamily investing. So to start off, the first pro to consider is that everyone needs a place to live. There's always going to be a need for shelter. Maslow's hierarchy of needs discusses this. You got water, you got food, you got clothing, and then you have shelter. So there's always going to be a strong demand for people looking to occupy space within a multifamily building. Not only that, but there's actually a growing trend of people moving into multifamily properties. And the reason for this is multiple reasons. But the first reason is as more and more young professionals are starting to enter the marketplace with a lot of student debt, it's a big problem that this country is facing. More and more people are not going to be able to qualify to be able to buy a residence, or it's going to take them a lot longer to actually be able to do so. Therefore, you're going to see a growing trend of people just opting to rent space within an apartment building that is a little bit more affordable for them at the time. Not only that, but what you're seeing is that as wages remain stagnant and asset prices begin to rise, it's going to become increasingly harder for people to afford buying their own home, which obviously bodes well for renting for people who own multifamily properties and having a pool of tenants to choose from. So number one is that everyone needs a place to live, and the trends of demand for multifamily housing seems to be increasing over time. Now, number two thing to consider, which is actually a phenomenal reason why investing in multifamily properties can be a great opportunity for an investor who's opportunistic, is that it offers an excellent opportunity to force appreciation. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that multifamily properties and really commercial real estate in general, the value is tied to a metric called your net operating income, which is all your income minus all your operating expenses gives you your net operating income, divided by a cap rate, which is a simplified return that is allocated to a particular market. So if you're able to increase the net operating income, the value of that particular property will be higher. Now, the reason why multifamily properties are easier to force appreciation is because a small increase in rents across all the apartments can add a substantial amount to the net operating income. So just as an example, let's imagine you have a 100-unit multifamily building and you decide to raise the rents of each of the units by $25. That corresponds to $2,500 to the bottom line each and every month, which means $30,000 a year to the bottom line. And let's say that the property trades at a 7 cap in your market, meaning that investors expect around a 7% return on the money they have invested in that property. That corresponds to over $428,000 in added value to that particular property. So even that slight increase in the rents for each individual unit over your entire building adds significant value to your building. So number two is it's much easier to force appreciation in these properties by just making slight changes and raising the rents across all the different units. And then number three, pro, I would say, is it's highly sought after, which will actually drive up the price. Right now, multifamily properties are flying off the market. Investors love the metrics associated with a lot of multifamilies across the country, and therefore they're coming in droves to actually try to buy properties in markets across the country. Now, if you own a multifamily property, this gives you a unique opportunity in order to maximize the value you receive from it, because in a lot of situations, there comes a bidding war where people are saying, you know what, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for this property because I know over time this will eventually turn into provide my investors or myself with a good return. So if you currently own a multifamily property, it's a really unique opportunity for you to be able to sell it at a great profit. So number three pro of multifamily properties is that they are highly sought after. And you will not have as much of an issue selling a multifamily property as you would maybe some other commercial buildings that are a little bit more niche. So now that we've gone over the 3 pros of multifamily properties, let's go over the cons, because there are cons in any type of investment. I say number 1 con, which is probably one of the most significant cons in my opinion, is it requires a significant amount of management. As you can imagine, if you have 100 units within the property, that's 100 or 200 potential tenants that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. They have to have an onboarding process. You have to have a clean out the apartment when people move out. If anything breaks, there's got to be a maintenance crew on site that manages the repairs of different components of the apartment. So you can imagine it becomes very, very intensive from a management perspective. So in order to mitigate this risk, what you often should do, especially when you start getting to these larger properties, is to hire either an on-site property manager to manage the asset, or you hire a third-party property management company that will actually handle all these responsibilities for you. However, as you do this, you have to take that into consideration in your financial analysis to make sure that you can actually afford to do this prior to picking up the property for a price that just wouldn't allow you to be able to support that. So number 1 con is that it requires significant amount of management, and it's really something you just got to consider before you pull the trigger. So number 2 thing you got to consider, which is one of the cons, is increased regulation. I know I discussed this slightly in my previous video, but what I mean by increased regulation is that as more and more people start moving into multifamily properties across the nation, what do you think is going to happen from a political perspective? Well, the political regulations are going to change, because now more and more people are living in these multifamily properties, and they're going to petition their politicians to shift the dynamic from the landlord to the tenant. You already see this in New York City. You already see this in California. You already see this in a lot of other states where multifamily properties are people renting multifamily properties is already a significant component of that environment. So if you're currently in an environment where it's very landlord friendly, you can imagine that as more and more people start to shift into multifamily units, that is probably going to change as a result of more and more people really petitioning their politicians to shift the dynamic from the landlord to the tenant. So number 2 is increased regulations that you have to follow. Otherwise, it could be a problem for you as an investor. And then finally, number 3, which is something that's also a pro but can be a con if you're looking to buy, is that it's extremely competitive right now. Investors are coming in from across the nation, here in Louisville and other parts of the country, to purchase multifamily properties. So as you can imagine, as soon as a property goes to the market, there's a ton of people trying to acquire the property, and obviously that's going to drive up the price of that particular asset. Just to give you an example, we just listed a 42-unit property last week, and my broker had about 10 to 15 tours just this past week and had about 50 or so confidentiality agreements out for people who are looking to review the property. So you can imagine, just in a week time frame, that amount of interest was shown in that particular property. So if you're looking to get into multifamily investing, understand that you're going to have to compete with a lot of people for a small amount of inventory. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If you found it helpful, feel free to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I really do like providing this awesome content. And if you guys have any questions in particular, feel free to reach out to me and ask, because I love creating videos to answer your particular question. Along with that, if you're in the Louisville area and you're looking for multifamily properties, as I said before, that's my focus area. I really like helping investors look, find, identify, analyze multifamily properties, and then finally pull the trigger and make your ownership or your dream of owning multifamily properties a reality. So feel free to reach out to me. We'll see you guys next time. See ya.